Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of the suffering servant passage, and we're in chapter 52, verses 11 and 12. We are rapidly arriving at chapter 53, which is the heart of the passage and the part of it that we know best. But we began this section last time with the phrase, "How lovely on the mountains are the feet of him who brings gospel, who brings good news," which Paul quotes in Romans chapter 10, verse 15. And we saw this call to rejoice. Rejoice because the eyewitnesses have seen it. Rejoice because God has comforted his people. Rejoice because God has paid the price. We talked about the fact that the people who are living during the days of Hezekiah, they haven't even committed the sins yet for which they will go into captivity. I mean, those are the generations that will follow immediately upon their time on earth. But it will happen to their children, their grandchildren, their great grandchildren. They will be the ones for whom Babylonian captivity becomes necessary. And yet they're told about it ahead of time. And God has already said, this is so that when it happens, you won't be surprised. You'll know that I told you already. You'll know that I'm the one who moves history. And we have in verses 11 and 12 a calling back from captivity, but it is duly fulfilled, not just by the decree of Cyrus. And in this passage, we had Cyrus mentioned by name, but also, um, but also by the salvation that Jesus brings and our freedom from sin. One of the things I failed to mention last time, and let me go ahead and mention it this time, just another proof that this can't just be about the Jews as a physical, cultural, political entity. This is about God's covenant people. When Isaiah was writing, God's covenant people were the Jews. But in the future, God's covenant people will be everyone who comes to God through the blood of Jesus Christ. He talks about the waste places of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is it's a walled city. It will be laid waste by the Babylonians, and they'll have to rebuild it. But there are no deserts within the city walls. Um, he's using Jerusalem, the place, as a metaphor for God's covenant people generally. And anyway, I just wanted to point that out. In these last several days, we've seen that if we're only talking about the Jews as a cultural or political entity, then these prophecies are not going to be fulfilled by history. But if we think of God's covenant people, they absolutely are. Okay, verses 11 and 12. Depart, depart, go out from there, touch nothing unclean, go out of the midst of her, purifying yourselves, you who carry the vessels of the Lord. But you will not go in haste, nor will you go out as fugitives. For the Lord Yahweh will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. There's a connection to the past, to their past in Egyptian enslavement, and also to the future and the salvation that they're going to have through the servant, and whose sacrifice we're going to be reading about in just a few verses. Let's not forget there are no verses or chapters in the original text; those were added millennia later. Anyway, um, leave, go out, touch nothing unclean. Um, the decree of Cyrus, 539 BC, allowed them to go home. And so they are allowed to leave, and they were given the holy vessels back. This happened not just to the Jews, and we've talked about this already because Cyrus in the larger passage has been mentioned by name. And other indigenous peoples were giving their holy relics back and told they could go home and rebuild their holy places. And so they have all these vessels to carry. At the beginning of the book of Ezra, we're told the many thousands of vessels they had to take back. And it's a call to seize the moment of your liberation and to not touch anything unclean, to maintain your purity. and that your covenant purity with the Lord. And and but he also says this is not something you're not gonna be fugitives. It's not the way this is going to happen. And it didn't happen in Egypt, and it didn't happen in Persia when they were freed from their Babylonian captivity. In Egypt, they took their time to leave. But Pharaoh was afraid after the death of the firstborn, and they asked their Egyptian neighbors to give them their jewelry, their gold, their silver, and they were given those things. And when they left deliberately, and they left on their own terms, really. And it wasn't until later that Pharaoh had second thoughts and sent his army out after them. Of course, when he did, who was there to protect them? God. God was there to protect them. God led them forth, and God was their rear guard. And when they left Persia, it was by royal decree, and they were officially handed back their sacred relics. And God's telling them it's going to be this way ahead of time. This is the way it's going to happen. And it's also this way when we are freed from sin. We don't escape sin as fugitives. We are rescued from sin because the Messiah will pay the price for our sin. And as we raise to walk in newness of life, we go forth not as a fugitive, but as a child of God, a child of the King. And yet, the admonition, don't touch anything unclean, and take care of the holy vessel you have been given, remains true for the Christian as well. Okay, we're going to look at verses 13 through 15 next time. And thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.